Okay, so good day. So let's start our lecture about anti-sexual harassment law and violence against women and children. Or in short, we call it as VAWC. So these are common to our country. They pass this kind of law because the Senate and the Congress and likewise with the persons or Filipino people or many families experience these kinds of maltreatment among inside their homes, especially that their father or their paternal serve or the father, the head of the family, became the perpetrator or those or the persons who always initiated a fight or either maltreatment or physical abuse and even emotional abuse to their wives and to their family, to their childrens. Okay, so let's start our lecture. So before we proceed, may I present to you the objectives of our lesson. So first, understand what sexual harassment and violence against women and their children in the Philippines workplace and school. Second, keep in mind the provisions of the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act of 1995 and violence against women and their children. Fourth, prepare yourself for any possibility in the future and protect and get protected and protected. Okay, so let's move on. Now, of course, you have ideas about sexual harassment, but as you can see, there is a certain definitions that was being or that were we call this again provided by the Senate or likewise with the persons who uh, compose this type of sexual harassment. Okay, so what I mean is that yung mga taong tawag dito, nag-formulate ng term na to, sexual harassment. So, sexual harassment, course, first thing most is that it is considered to be uninvited and unwelcome verbal or physical abuse of a sexual nature, especially by a person in authority toward a subordinate as an employee or student. For instance, ako as your teacher, sinabi ko sa isang student ko, baka naman, pwede naman ganito, or di kaya pag sabihin nyo, can we have sex? Just like that. So those are example of what we call verbal abuse or di kaya na verbal harassment. So, what I want to initiate in there or yung nilalaman ng aking sinabi is all about it's about sexual harassment or I want to do a harassment over my student. Okay. Second then yung employee. For instance, you are the boss or di kaya meron kang boss at sinabi niya na uh, can you be my just like for instance the right your fucking body or can we have sex without just like for instance the middle of nowhere just it pops up into his mind or her mind then yun lang sabi niya ganon so in that case we can consider it as a form of verbal abuse or kaya verbal harassment pwede naman for instance kaya your teacher touches your what we call this again your genitals or either your private parts without one more thing is that without your consent just like that and one more thing hindi rin talaga po pwede because we have this what we call the moral ascendancy talaga dapat talaga yung teacher 'di ba you serve or you should become a role model. Serve as a role model to your students. So, dapat hindi mo yun ginagawa. And likewise, doon naman sa empleyado, for instance, hinawa, for instance, naglalakad yung babae, ngayon, hinawakan niya yung private, for instance, yung butt, yung pet, yung breast, just like that. So, it's a form of what we call sexual harassment. And one more thing, kapag hinawakan mo yung babae or hinawakan ka nang hindi man lang nagpapaalam sa'yo or without your consent. Just like that. So we can consider it as a form of sexual harassment. Second, it is unlawful to harass a person or applicant or employee because of that person's sex. Harassment can include sexual harassment or unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical harassment of a sexual nature. Isang example nito, for instance, there is a student, meron siyang lacking activity, pumunta sa teacher, sabi niya, Sir, paano ko may sasabit itong paano ko makukomplete or paano ko magkakaroon ng grades sa iyong subject. So, itong teacher naman, of course, or either instructor, of course, magigagawin niya yung advantage. Pwede niya sabihin na, okay, punta ka sa bahay, punta ka sa lugar ko, ganitong oras, alam mo nang gagawin. Okay, just like for instance. Then in the case of in Manila before, there is a certain institution wherein there is one professor, that requested, hindi naman requested, parang talagang pinorse niya tong student. Sabi niya, mamili ka, 4 or kwarto. 4 kasi means you are, di ba? Kapag 3 is to 75 to 77, just like that. Pero kapag 4, of course, that's a failing grade. Na mamili ka, sabi ng teacher, 4 or kwarto. Of course, these students na talagang gusto sigurong pumasa or graduating that time, yun yung ginawa niya. Diba? Instead of, tawag dito, of declining and reporting the incident. Diba? So, yung ganon. So, just like that. Then one more thing, ano pa, yung in terms of employee naman, sabi nung isang employee mo, sabi niya, okay, I will just hire you if you will uh, allow me. Or if you can allow me to, or you join me, hindi naman allow or join me, kung mapagbibigyan mo ako sa aking mga sexual or pagbibigyan mo ako sa sexual flavor, sexual favor na to. For instance, pumunta ka sa kwarto ko, ganito, ganyan. So, yun, meron siyang sexual advances, di ba? Then, one more thing, pwede naman yung sabihin kapag employee na, okay, I will promote you as long as you give me pleasure, just like that. So in that case, class, those are example of what we call sexual harassment. Okay, they are taking advantage to their subordinates. Third one, it is an act or series of act involving any unwelcome advance. So ibig sabihin, unwelcome, tawag dito, you did not expect, di ba? An unwelcome, hindi ka man lang, he done this action, he uttered those kinds of verbal abuse or di kaya naman sexual harassment words without your consent. Di ba? Without your consent. And of course, you did not anticipate to hear and of course to experience those kinds of advances, sexual advances. So in that case, class, we can consider it as a form of sexual harassment. So request or demand for a sexual favor or other verbal or physical behavior of a sexual nature committed by a government employee or official in work-related, training, or education-related environment. Okay, so that is example of sexual harassment. And as you can see, there are a lot of issues or cases that we can link sexual harassment. And, of course, this was formulated because of the experiences of our uh, fellow Filipino or fellow countrymen, especially in the cases of women nowadays. Okay, now, so as defined by Republic Act number 7877, an act declaring sexual harassment unlawful in the uh, employment, education, or training environment, and for other purposes was approved on February 14, 1995. So this Republic Act was already approved back in February 14, 1995, wherein the president was still Fidel V. Ramos, if I'm not mistaken, was the president during the time and became effective on March 5, 1995. 15 days after its publication in the Malaya and Times and Journal of February 18, 1995. It is known the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act of 1995. Now, the question is it still effective? Yes, effective pa rin po siya ngayon. And the good thing is that we already there are some amendments and innovation amendments regarding this law. Ibig sabihin, even now, even though na-touch mo lang, or di kaya naman sinabi mo lang na ang ganda mo without just like that, or you whistle someone, di ba? Whistle someone, with ganda. Ang ganda mo, just like that. So it's already considered to be a sexual harassment or act of lasciviousness nowadays. Now, it is committed by an employee manager, supervisor, agent of the employer, teacher, instructor, professor, coach, trainer, or any other person who having authority, influence, or moral ascendancy over another in work or training or education environment, demands, requests, or otherwise requests any sexual favor from the other, regardless of whether the demand, request, or requirement for submission is accepted by the object of said act. Okay, so that is the purpose. So that is the definition of declaring or sexual harassment. So once you experience these kinds of maltreatment by your what we call this again superiors, supervisors, just like that. Because I firmly believe that we call them as supervisor or superiors because they have this what we call moral ascendancy over unto us. So that is why, yun nga, di ba? Mostly talaga nag-take advantage sila kung alam nilang they have an authority over unto us or either what we call this moral ascendancy over to us. Okay, next we have this what we call offender or superior, offended or offended. That is the subordinate. Okay, so what are the definition of terms? First, we have this what we call ascendancy. So when we talk about ascendancy, this is the state that exists when one person or group has power over another. That is what we call ascendancy. Her apparent dominance of her husband was really her attempt to make him pay attention to her. Ascendancy, ascendance, dominance, control, governing or controlling influence. That is what we call ascendancy. Ibig sabihin, they have a control over you. Diba? Then, how about this what we call sexual? Does not have involved in the act itself, but anything that has to do with act itself, but anything that has to do with or related to reproductive organs or a behavior which is sexually motivated or sexual desires. For instance, one of your managers called you, o di kaya hinawakan ka sa braso, then pababa, just like that, without your consent. Those are then paghawak niya, nahawak-hawakan niya yung private parts mo, just like that. That is considered to be sexual harassment. Okay? Next, what are the forms of sexual harassment? So what are the forms of sexual harassment? We have the physical, so malicious touching or act of lasciviousness or lewdness. For instance, hindi ako, iba na lang. For instance, ikaw na babaeng estudyante, yes, hinawak-hawakan ka in your private parts. So touch lang naman, or ever simple touch. That is considered to be an act of lasciviousness. Okay? Next, act of lasciviousness concept, the act of making a physical contact with the body of another person for the purpose of obtaining sexual gratification other than or without intention of sexual intercourse. Diba? Sexual intercourse. Ibig sabihin nito, kahit na wala man din siyang or without intention, accidental pero nahawakan pa rin, that is still considered to be act of lasciviousness because it's very easy to say na you accidentally hold those private parts of the women kasi women talaga ito eh. You can really say na, hindi ko sinasadya. That is not my intention. It's easy for us to say, but yun nga, the damage has been done, nahawakan niya na. So that is considered to be act of lasciviousness. And one more thing, kapag kasi ganon, di ba, what is the main point? Why is it that this person is doing such things like act of lasciviousness, malicious touching? Because his main objective is to have a sexual intercourse with the what? The person who's being oppressed or di kaya naman yung victim, di ba? So, yun nga, yung ibig sabihin, the contact may be by the body of the accused such as by the lips, hand, foot, or by means of any object or instrument. In either case, there must be no form of insertion into the anus amount or sex organ amounting to rape through sexual abuse. Yun naman pala. So, ibig sabihin nito, we can just consider it as a act of lasciviousness once na itong tao na to, hindi kayo nagkaroon ng what we call intercourse within your anus, oral sex, vaginal sex, just like that. So kung either, how about sir, for instance, nahawakan niya lang yung part ng ating, for instance, the vagina of women, we considered it as a rape na. Pero for instance, hinawak-hawakan lang, nakadamit ka, nahawakan, that is act of lasciviousness. And then you might, if this person, this oppressor, perpetrator, or said na, okay, I like you. Can we have sex? Just like, for instance, those are act of lasciviousness. Now, in the second one, it is distinguished from attempted rape if there is no intent to have sexual intercourse with the victim. The intent may be inferred from the circumstances of time. For instance, ito, wala naman siyang balak na manggahasa sa'yo, pero yun nga lang, in the case of hinawak-hawakan niya yung private parts mo, hinila ka just like that, at gusto kang i-kiss, that is considered to be attempted rape. Okay? So, yun siya. Then, place and occasion or inferred from the nature of itself. It is distinguished from the unjust vexation in that there is no lewd design in unjust vexation. Example, the act of an ardent lover such as kissing, kissing, if they tend to kiss, okay, embracing arising from his passion, in-embrace niya, they hug you, just like that, or unjust vexation merely, the touching of the private parts of a woman out of your curiosity is unjust vexation. Okay, so ibig sabihin dito, the touching of the private parts of a woman out of your curiosity is unjust vexation. Ba? Okay. So I see. If the person touches the private part of a woman out of curiosity, that is considered to be unjust vexation. Now, how about the fourth one? We have the act of lasciviousness including sexual okay. Okay, ito naman, including sexual, if the act of lasciviousness, including sexual intercourse, is performed upon a child or exploited in prostitution or other sexual abuse. Kasi that is why we are discussing about this kind of topic. We are not only referring to those who are already in a legal age, because VAWC or criminality, like for instance, rape or act of lasciviousness, unjust vexation, and intercourse, it can happen to somebody, especially yung alam niyo yung tinatawag natin na bugaw. Those are types of prostitution, di ba? Types of prostitution pa rin yon. Pero yun nga lang kasi dito, yun sa sexual abuse, even a child is being exploited. You know what? There are some countries, just like for instance Afghanistan, because Afghanistan nowadays is being controlled by Taliban, isn't it? Now, in that country, class, do you know that children are being exploited? Lalo na yung mga bata na wala ng mga magulang. And one more thing, yung worst case talaga, even dito sa country natin, akala nyo wala, there are some cases na kung saan nakikidnap sila ng bata, then ibinebenta nila, ipinupunta nila sa ibang bansa, and yun nga, the child is being exploited. Nagiging, what? Nagiging prostitute siya, just like that. Or yung iba naman, anong ginagawa na yung cyber sex scam, just like that, di ba? Okay. So yun naman yung mga ginagawa nila, which is which we can associate to what we call sexual harassment. Now, abuse other than acts of lasciviousness, such as when the child is the subject of obscene publication or pornography or indecent shows, whether male or female, the act would constitute sexual abuse punished under Republic Act 7610, the Child Abuse Law, Olivares, July 29, 2006. 2006. Now, the question is, lalaki lang ba or babae lang ba? No. This is inclusive. Kahit na bata man, kahit lalaki man yan or babae man yan, basta bata, okay, tapos pinagagawan mo ng what we call is publication or pornography, just like that, you can be, they can file a case against you under Republic Act 7610, under the Child Abuse Law. Okay, it is still considered to be a sexual abuse. No, sexual abuse pa rin po siya. Okay, so what kind? So forcible, Article 336, if made under circumstances or forcible rape through force, threat, violation, or intimidation. Okay, for instance, ito siya. Doon sa Article 336 siya, if they force you, for instance, hinila ka, hinubaran ka. Hinila ka, just like for instance, force and threat yun. Sinabi niya, papatayin kita kung hindi mo ako pagbibigyan or hindi mo binigay ang hinihiling ko. Violation, of course, when he violated you. When, of course, once he violated you, there's a possibility that he touches your private parts, and at the same time, he inserted his private part to your private part. You have done this what we call sexual intercourse. Okay? Wait lang. Okay, so another thing is that yung tinatawag natin dito na intimidation. So when we talk about intimidation, class, one example is that they might use intimidation to get your brother to mow the lawn for you, or intimidation can refer to the act of making someone feel timid or afraid, or tinatakot ka, di ba? So tinatakot ka, for instance, kung hindi mo ibibigay yan, papatayin kita, just like that. Or that's still considered to be an intimidation, di ba? Or it can also refer that fearful feeling itself, tinatakot ka. Kapag tinatakot ka, for some of us Filipino people kasi, di ba, lalo yung mga kabayan, kapag natatakot, kung wala silang alam sa self-defense, talagang, di ba, they have no choice but to just give and to just adhere to what this perpetrator is asking for, di ba? Then next, the accused may be any person and the victim may be a male or female. Ito class, hindi lang naman siya male or female daw pala. So, ibig sabihin nito, it could be inclusive. No? So, ibig sabihin nito, hindi lang kasi mga babae ang nakakaranas ng sexual abuse, kundi even naman mga lalaki nowadays, lalo na yung mga bata, di ba? There are some instances na kung saan, yung recently lang meron ata yon yung I think sa ibang bansa ata, if I'm not mistaken. Ito naman, this is not about religious, pero there are some priests kasi daw, hindi lahat, of course, ito siguro, iba talaga yung kanya, tawag dito, talagang hindi siya magandang ehemplo, halimbawa, Diba? There are some priests na talagang they take advantage to their sacristan. Just like that, di ba? Ang sacristan kasi mga lalaki, just like that, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so ayun nga, in that case, that can be considered under this what we call sexual harassment. Okay. Next, consented Article 339, if made under circumstances of seduction, whether simple or qualified. So a victim is a female or chaste character, be over 12 years but below 18 years or a widow. Then, sabi pa dito, of course, there was illicit or abuse of authority, abuse of confidence, or abuse of relationship. Okay, so that is under Article 339 of our Constitution. What do we call that Republic Act? Under, I think that is still under the act of lasciviousness, di ba? So now moving on, overt sexual advances. So when we talk about overt sexual advances, it is a gestures with lewd insinuation, request, or demand for sexual favors and lurid remarks, use of objects, pictures, or graphics letter or writing note with sexual underpinnings, other forms, and analogous to the ones mentioned. For instance, merong nagbigay sa'yo ng letter, sabi niya, makita tayo sa ganitong oras, magsuot ka ng ganito. Bawag mong ipaalam sa mga polis. Ba, ikaw lang dapat ang pumunta dito. Okay. Or another thing is that they send you, for instance, yung pornography, just like, or they get picture ng kanyang private part, sinend niya sa'yo, because through that picture, siguro, parang this person have the perception na rin na, or tawag dito, through that picture, you can easily instill or perceive na meron gusto yung tao sa'yo, just like that. And hindi lang gusto it's about sexual favor agad-agad, di ba? So those are example, letters or writing, notes with sensual underpining. That is what we call overt sexual advances. Okay, gesture with lewd insinuation. We have this what we call verbal. So when we talk about verbal, request, touch of lasciviousness for sexual favors. So concept, the act of making a physical contact with the body of another person for the purpose of obtaining sexual gratification other than or without intention of sexual intercourse. Okay, so the elements of the crime of act of lasciviousness are, these are the following. We have that the offender commits any act of lasciviousness or lewdness. Di ba? So, ibig sabihin ng, di ba, yung act of lasciviousness kasi, either they touch you just like that, they talk to you just like, with intention of just like a sexual favor. And one more thing, when we talk about this what we call lewdness kasi, di ba, ano ba ang lewdness kasi? Okay, so lewdness stands for involving or being sexual conduct that is considered indecent or offensive. Example nito, for instance, meron kang supervisor, tapos kung supervisor mo lumapit sa'yo, then ipinapahawak yung kanyang private parts sa'yo. So that is considered to be a indecent or offensive act of sexual favors, di ba? Sexual actions. Third one, we have this what we call that is done by using force or intimidation. Sabi na kanina, pinoforce ka. Then, when the offender party is under 12 years of age and that offended party is another person or either sex. Okay, always remember that it is child abuse, sexual child abuse, if this child is below 12 years old. Pero sa atin kasi is 18 years old, di ba? If the child is 18 years old and below, that is considered to be child abuse. Di ba? Yun yung legal kasi sa atin. I think this 12 years, when offender is under 12 years of age. Okay, but there are a certain thing kasi, meron na bago dyan, pero we'll just keep updated siguro later on. Next, we have the lurid remarks. So it can be used to describe things that are sensational graphics. Yan yung sabi ko kanina, di ba? Objects. Diba? So pwede rin yung nagsisend siya ng private parts niya sa'yo. In that way, of course, we can file a case on him, which is the harassment or sexual harassment or di kaya ma-act of lasciviousness. So harassment unlawful in the employment, education, or training environment, and four, who are covered by this act: workers or employees, applicants or candidates for employment, students, those undergoing training institution or educational trainees, who are punishable by head liable in this act. We have this what we call employer or head. Of course, they are the one who have this what we call moral ascendancy over their subordinates. Second, we have the employee who belongs to higher level. Third, manager and supervisor. Fourth, agent of the employer. Fifth, anybody else who has the authority, influence, or moral ascendancy over the offered. Then, any person who directs or induces another to commit any act of sexual harassment. Okay, any person who cooperates in the commission of the act by another without whom it would not have been committed. So for instance, yung ginawa ka lang na parang tawag dito, tawag dito, what's the another term? Parang ginawa kang hindi naman, parang third party ka, parang material in such crimes. Just like for instance, kaibigan ko yung or kakilala ko yung babae, tapos yung kilala ko merong gusto sa kanya. So ako makikiusap sa babae para sumama sa akin, tapos ibigay ko doon. Just like for instance, doon sa rapist naman, or di kaya perpetrator na yon, di ba? So in that case, they can also file a case against me because ako yung parang naging bridge, di ba? So in another case, we have this what we call elementary or high school teacher, college or university professor, college or university instructor, or coach or trainer. So yan. So we are also included. So for instance, your teacher, sabi niya, oh, sige, baka pwede naman, ganito na lang, di ba? Gusto mong pumasa. Okay. Tapos tong estudyante, sige, gusto kong pumasa, pero hindi niya alam na sexual favor pala yung magiging kapalit. Okay, so just like that. So we should be careful. Okay, so next, where is this applicable? Workplace, yan. School, any other place of training, institution, or education. So these types of action or indecent actions happens in these common places. Okay, so in a work-related or employment environment, the sexual favor is made as a condition in the hiring or in the employment. Yung sinasabi ko nga sa inyo, kung gusto, there are some instances kasi na doon sa hiring, kapag gusto mong magkaroon ng trabaho, this employer will give you an option. For instance, I will hire you as long as you give me what, or yes, give me what I'm asking you for as a favor, or you will adhere to my favor. Okay, or you will agree to my favor. And the third one, reemployment or continued employment. Okay, I will not, what we call this again, I will not end your contract. I will renew your contract as long as you give me what I'm asking for. So, hindi po pwede yun. Promotion, privileges, and so on and so forth. Pwede rin, di ba? Compensation. I will give you money. Okay, I will give you 20,000 pesos as long as you give me what I want, what I'm asking you as a favor, just like that. So, those are example of what we call this again, sexual favors. So, second, the above act would impair the employee's right or privilege under existing labor laws. Okay, sa labor laws kasi dapat, ibig sabihin dito, walang ibang qualification kundi ang mga papeles lang, your skills, wala nang iba. Hindi po pwede na qualification yung pakikipagtalik or sexual favor over the what we call qualifications na hindi to po pwedeng gawin ng employer mo or ng employer over his or her employee. Okay, nagigets niyo po ba? Then the third one, the above act would result in intimidating, hostile, or offensive environment for the employees. Yes, di ba? Imbes na para maging masaya sila doon, maging tawag dito, yung aim lang talaga is to work and to aim, tawag to gain some money or income, wala na. Magiging, it would result to intimidation, hostile, and offensive environment. Hindi na siya ganon. Diba? Wala na. And one more thing, kapag ganun kasi yung nangyayari, of course, we can associate or we can say that that is an immorality act or immoral act, an indecent act, just like that. So, of course, what do you expect from that? So, hindi na siya maganda. Hindi na siya kagalang-galang, just like that. Hindi na siya, what we call, hindi na siya decent workplace. So, diba? Just like that. Okay. So, in an education or training environment, in an education or training environment, ito siya, against one who is under the peer, custody, or supervisor of the offender, against one's education, training, apprenticeship, or tutorship is entrusted to the offender. Okay, for instance, kayo, magkakaroon kayo ng OJT, yung maghahanda sa inyo, teacher, or di kaya naman, mga tawag dito, mga managers, just like that, because you are having your, this what we call internship on the job training. So once they committed a crime, just like for instance, sexual favors, not flavors, favors, you can file against these persons. Bawal po yon. Wala pong ibang kapalit or tawag dito na wala nang ibang way para nang sa ganun may pasaka just like it. Yung performance mo lang talaga. And sexual favors are not one of them. Okay, always keep in mind those. Okay, when the sexual favor is made a condition to the giving of passing grade or the granting of honors and scholarship or the payment of stipend, allowance, or other benefits, privilege, or consideration. Fourth, when the sexual advances result in intimidating, hostile, or offensive environment for the student, trainee, or apprentice. Okay. What procedures do you follow when harassed? Ito po yung tamang proseso. First, you come out and complain. Saan magko-complain? Pwede sa barangay, pwede sa municipal hall, or di kaya naman sa police station. Anyone who is what we call this, who is implementing, who has the task to safeguard and protect its citizens, di ba? You report or escalate the act of sexual harassment to your immediate supervisor, di ba? For instance, katrabaho mo naman yon, ang gagawin mo, pumunta ka sa superior mo at ipaalam mo. Pero kung yung superior mo mismo, anong gagawin mo? Huwag mong i-chismis sa mga katrabaho mo, kundi dumiretso ka na sa what? Sa police station or to any agency or institution that you can file, or any department that you can file a case against this perpetrator or harasser. Okay, next. A closure memo is served if the alleged offender is not found guilty or prescribed sanction are enforced if. Okay. So human resource follows the discipline management process, part of which is its own investigation and procedure. So dapat, for instance, colleague mo, paalam mo sa supervisor mo, then yung HR dapat informed din sila para sila yung mag-conduct ng investigation about the what? About the what we call this again, uh, actions or indecent actions that was done by your colleague. Then once confirmed, the alleged offender's boss consult and coordinate with HR. Kung ganun man yung magiging proseso, then ano na mangyayari? Yun na. Pupunta na sila sa police station or di kaya someone who have the authority to capture and to imprison these kinds of hindi naman, perpetrators. Okay, so your employer or head's duties or involvement. So proactive approach. So focuses on eliminating problem before they have a chance to appear. The difference, prevent or deter the commission of act of sexual harassment. So that is what we call proactive approach. Ibig sabihin nito, they will prevent or deter the commission of act of sexual harassment. So bago pa bumigat, sila na yung mismong gagawa ng paraan. Then reactive approach is based on responding to events after they have happened. Provide the So for instance, ang proactive approach kasi, kung nakikita nyo, kung dati-rate, meron nang nagre-reklamo, just like that. For instance, yung mga hawak-hawak lang, or the way, verbal harassment, just like that. So dapat, in that way pa lang, medyo hindi naman tawag ito, winarningan yung tao. Kung inulit-ulit, tanggalin na. Pero kapag reactive kasi, the damage had been already done, or it has already been done, na kung saan meron na siyang nagawa na sexual harassment over his or to his fellow or her fellow colleagues, just like that. Then provide the procedure for the resolution, settlement, or prosecution of act of sexual harassment. So, in this case, class, mas maganda na proactive na. Pero, yun nga kasi, hindi naman kasi tayo pwedeng magkaso or file against these perpetrators kung wala pa naman silang nagagawa. Diba? Or we don't have this what we call probable cause. So that is why every now and then probable cause is very important. And if you notice that this person is acting maliciously, so that's the time, that's the possible time siguro that you will report it to your HR or di kaya naman sa iyong superiors for them to be informed, and likewise for them to make an action to prevent these actions that was to prevent the malicious actions that was done by your colleagues. Okay, possible yon. In order to attain such end, your employer or head shall first promulgate appropriate rules and regulation in consultation with and jointly approved by the employees or students or trainees through their duly designated representatives. Second, these appropriate rules and regulation may include but not limited to guideline or proper decorum in the workplace. Employee code of conduct, dapat meron kasi talaga yan. Onboarding or new hire employee or in orientation or induction program. So doon pa lang sa onboarding or doon sa mga seminars talaga, dapat pinipresenta or dinidiscuss, ina-expound itong mga klase ng harassment na to para aware naman ang bawat isa sa inyo. Okay? Then, prescribe the procedure for the investigation of sexual harassment cases and administrative sanction, therefore discipline management processes. Okay, so third, create a committee on decorum and investigation CODI of cases on sexual harassment. The committee shall conduct meeting as the case may be with officer and employees, teacher, instructor, professor, coaches, trainer, and students or trainees to increase understanding and prevent incident of sexual harassment. It shall also conduct investigation of alleged cases constituting contributing to sexual harassment. The fourth one, be solidarity liable for damages arising from the acts of sexual harassment committed in employment, education, or training environment if the employer or head of the office, educational, or training institution is informed of such act by the offended and no immediate action is taken. Okay, financial damages, ito yung mababayaran, monetary settlement, emotional, mental, psychological damages, counseling, referral to an agency offering professional help, any other advice or option available. Ngayon, yun yung mangyayari kapag, di ba, kasi ang liable doon or accountable doon later on, for instance, in your, tawag dito, in your company, nangyari yon. Ngayon, aside from filing a case, itong company ninyo, kailangan i-provide din ito. So, monetary, yung sabi ko nga, counseling, referral, and any other advice. Para lang sa ganon, makarecover ulit yung tao na naging biktima ng sexual harassment. Okay? So, can the victim pursue independent action for the damages? Yes, possible. Yes, nothing in this actual preclude roll out in advance. The victim of work, education, or training-related sexual harassment from instituting a separate and independent action for damages and other affirmative relief. Okay. So, pwede po siyang independently na gumawa ng action for the damages. Yes, possible po yon because it's one of your privileges. Hindi naman, not necessarily naman na kailangan mo pang dumiretso kung talagang mabigat na yan. So, sa tingin mo, mas malapit, mas magaan yung pakiramdam mo, no, dumiretso ka na sa police station, NBI, or di kaya naman those who are against or implementing this what we call anti-sexual harassment, pumunta ka doon, di ba? Okay. So what are the penalties for the violation of this act? So under Section 7, penalties, any person who violates the provision of this act shall upon conviction be penalized by imprisonment of not less than 1 month or no more than 6 months or a fine of not less than 10,000 pesos, nor more than 20,000 pesos or both such fine and imprisonment at at the discretion of the court because it depends upon the court on what kind or what type of punishment are they going to uh, give you. So yan, both of the discretion of the court based on the degree of gravity of defense. So plus nakadepende po yung kaso ninyo or nakadepende yung punishment ninyo kung gaano kabigat yung ginawa ninyong krimen. Okay, grave offense, dismissal of course. For instance, kung may trabaho ka, matatanggal ka. Then, less grave, madidismiss ka muna, di ba? Madidismiss, then less grave offense. That is what they call grave offense, dismissal. Less grave offense, first offense, fine or suspension for 30 days, but not exceeding 6 months. Light offense, first offense, reprimand. Second offense, fine or suspension not exceeding 30 days. Third offense, dismissal. So, yun po yung magiging hatol kung sakali mang you committed a crime such like sexual harassment. The best thing to do when done an act of sexual harassment, reject the advance being made firmly but politely, but loud and conspicuous enough for potential witnesses to hear and see it. Although for instance, may lumalapit-lapit sa'yo, may tinatouch sa'yo yung kanyang private person, you can say that, stop. Okay. Okay. In that case, syempre maririnig ka ng mga katabi mo, ng mga office mates mo, or either your classmates o mga kasama mo sa room na yon. Okay? So, yan, at least merong magiging witness. Then second, take note of the event by recording the date, exact time, and specific location in the workplace where it happened. So, dapat isulat mo. For instance, ito, December 8 at exactly, anong oras? 3 o'clock. Just like that. Okay? Then tell your closest confidant in the workplace or school first, yung pinakamalapit sa iyo at mapagkakatiwalaan mo sa kanya ka mag-open up. Fourth, report it to your immediate supervisor or head unless he or she is the offender. Okay, kung hindi siya yung offender, sa kanya mo ipalam. Pero kung siya yung offender, anong gagawin? Dumiretso ka na agad. Diba? Alam mo na yung gagawin mo. Because you can do an action or you can file against that perpetrator, especially if it is your head, independently. Fifth, go to your HR person in your immediate supervisor's absence, or if he is the person in question. Okay? So RA 9262, Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act of 2004. So now, in this case, ito siya. We have the violence against women. So any act or series of act committed by any person against a woman who is his wife, former wife or with whom the person has or had a sexual or dating relationship or with whom he has a common child or against her child under her care with result or is likely result in physical, sexual, psychological harm or suffering or economic abuse, including the threats of such acts battery, assault, coercion, harassment, or arbitrary deprivation of liberty. For instance, kinukulong na lang kayo, hindi kayo hinayang lumalabas ng bahay. Coercion, assault, yan, sinasaktan. Battery, pinagbubugbog, di ba? Physical violence refers to act that include bodily or physical harm. Sexual harm refers to an act which is sexual in nature committed against women or child. Di ba? So it includes, but it's not limited, rape, sexual harassment, act of lasciviousness, treating women or her child as a sex object, making demeaning and sexually suggestive remark, physically attacking the sexual parts of the victim body, forcing her or him to watch obscene publication. Kung pinoforce ka niya na manood ng mga pornography or di kaya obscene publication, para nang siguro ganun, ma-arouse din yung iyong, of course, ma-arouse ka rin, di ba? Yung arousal para siguro sabayan mo siya, just like that. That is under this what we call rape pa rin siya, di ba? Or violence against children or women. Okay, so indecent acts or make fields thereof, forcing the wife and mistress, lover to live in conjugal home or sleep together in the same room with the abuser. So, yun po yung mga example niya. Act causing or attempting to cause the victim to engage in any sexual activity by forcing, threat, or force physical or other harm or threat of physical or other harms or coercion. Okay, next is prostituting the woman or a child. So, parang nagiging sexual object na lang sila. So, yon. Psychological violence. Kapag sinabi kasi natin psychologist about the mind, di ba? So, refers to act or omission causing or likely to cause mental or emotional suffering of the victim, such as but not limited to intimidation, harassment, stalking and damage to property, public ridicule or humiliation, the repeated verbal abuse and mental infidelity. Diba? Then it includes causing or allowing the victim to witness the physical, sexual, or psychological abuse of a member of the family to which the victim belongs, or to witness pornography in any form, or to witness abusive injury to pets, or to unlawful or unwanted deprivation of the right to custody and or visitation of common children. Okay, for instance, kung tawag dito, sinasaktan niya yung mga sinasaktan niya yung asawa niya, yung pwede kasi yung even the kabit di ba? As long nakakasira siya sa psychological, sa mental health, sa emotional health. And one more thing, kapag ito pinoforce ka rin na manood ng pornography at for instance, pwede rin kasi na if you witness the perpetrator na hinarman niya yung mga alagang hayop or pet niyo sa bahay, of course, that is still under psychological violence. Because lalo na kung ang batang nakakakita, talagang tawag dito, magkakaroon ng what we call this trauma. Okay? So now, in terms of economic abuse, it refers to act that makes or attempt to make a woman financially dependent with exclude but is not limited to the following. Withdrawal of financial support or preventing the victim from engaging in any legitimate profession, occupation, business or activity except in cases wherein the other spouse or partner objects on valid, serious, and moral grounds as defined in Article 73 of the Family Code. Depende kasi sa pinag-usapan nyo yan. Pero for instance, kung wala na nga kayo tapos pinagbabawalan ka pa rin magtrabaho, you can file a case against him because that is what we call under economic abuse, di ba? Kasi for instance, di ba, hindi niya naman kayang i-provide yung pangangailangan mo pero pinagbabawalan ka pa rin yung pagtrabaho. So that is still considered to be an economic abuse because pinagbabawalan ka niya nga na magtrabaho even though wala naman siya talagang kakayahan to provide for your needs, di ba? Or yung pangangailangan ng pamilya ninyo. Okay, so next is deprivation of or threat of deprivation of financial resources and the right to the use and enjoyment of the conjugal community or property owned in common. Okay, next is destroying household property, controlling the victim owns money or properties, or solely controlling the conjugal money or properties without the consent of your partner. Because when we talk about conjugal, ibig sabihin you are already legal. Ibig sabihin, kayo ay merong karapatan sa property na ito. May karapatan kayo pareho sa bahay, sa sasakyan, sa lupang ito. Now, ang nangyari, binebenta niya, sinalda niya, or inirenta niya, pinarenta niya, just like for instance, na hindi ka man lang ini-inform. So that is still under economic abuse. So always remember class, that when we talk about what we call this conjugal property, ibig sabihin, you must inform your partner or both of you are informed or yes, both of you are informed and aware kung saan mapupunta yung pera or kung ano yung mangyayari na sa inyong mga property. Okay, pero kung ito, kinokontrol lang ng isa sa inyo, pwede kang magsampa ng economic abuse. Economic abuse. Okay? So, next, we have this what we call battery. So, it refers to an act of inflicting physical harm upon the woman or her child. Ito yung sinasaktan mo, binubugmog mo, just like that. And also, just aside from that, it also causes, di ba, kasi pag binugbog ka, it also causes psychological and emotional distress. Yun naman yung masakit pa dito. Battered woman syndrome refers to a scientifically defined pattern of psychological and behavior symptoms found in women living in battering relationship as a result of cumulative abuse. Kung palaging sinasaktan ng babae, di ba, yung asawa, just like that, parang doon sa kanyang psychological and behavior, magkakaroon ngayon ng epekto yon. Baka mamaya, sa lahat ng mga lalaki na nakikita niya, matatakot na siya. Kasi, yung asawa niya mismo or yung live-in partner niya ay sinasaktan siya. Okay, next is stalking. So when we talk about stalking, it refers to an intentional act committed by a person who knowingly and without lawfully justification follows the woman or her child or places the woman or her child under surveillance directly or indirectly or thereof. That is what we call stalking. Yung, ano yung stalking dito? Sabi niya, yung intentional act committed by person. Okay, so inaalam mo kung saan siya pumupunta or di ka na nakakaroon ng surveillance, di ba? Kahit hindi naman kailangan. So that is what we call stalking. Next is dating in a relationship. Refers to situation wherein the parties live as a husband and wife without the benefit of marriage or a romantically involved over time and on a continuing basis during the course of relationship. A casual acquaintance or ordinary socialization between two individuals in a business or social context is not dating relationship. Okay, sexual refers to single sexual act with may or may not result in the bearing of a common child. Nagkaroon lang ng pagtatalik, just like for instance, pero walang nabuong bata. Not result in the bearing of a common child. Safe place or shelter refers to any home or institution maintained or managed by the Department of Social and Development, DSWD. Oh, just like for instance, pwede ka rin dumulog sa Department of Social Welfare and Development para nang sa ganon matulungan kanila. If you are a victim of violence against children and VAWC, violence against children, women and children pala. Okay, children refers to those below 18 years of age or older but are incapable of taking care of themselves, as includes in the biological children of the victim and other children under her care. Okay, that is children. Okay, center of approach relationship, married or not, living in or not, sexual or dating relationship, and including lesbian relationship with common child. Okay, so yan, those are the center of approach. So liable person on VAWC, we have the husband or ex-husband, boyfriend or ex-boyfriend, father of the woman's child, lesbian girlfriend, partner or ex-partner, any person with whom the woman has the sexual or dating relationship. Those are considered to be liable person on violence against women and children. Under Section 5 of the Section 5 Act of Violence Against Women and Their Children, the crime violation against women and the children is committed through any of the following acts: causing physical harm to the woman or her child, threatening to cause the woman or her child physical harm, attempting to cause the woman or her child physical harm, placing the woman or her child in a fear or imminent physical harm. So, yun po, yung mga, ito naman actually, kung saan ginagawa, di ba, or nangyayari. These are the ways kung saan nakukommit yung different kinds of crimes or acts like this. Okay, so always remember what we discussed about this again, class. So I anticipate that at least you learn something about the discussion about anti-sexual harassment law and violence against women and children. So yan. So thank you for listening and continue reviewing your notes.